I found out my stepdad was stealing my college fund, so I made sure he'd lose everything. I don't remember authorizing that withdrawal, I muttered, squinting at the line item on the old bank statement in my hand. The air in the guest room was thick with dust and stale memories, the kind that clung to the corners of family homes long after the warmth had left. I had only come in to declutter the old filing cabinet, Mom's cabinet, really. She died 3 years ago, but no one had touched it since. Buried beneath tax returns and appliance manuals was an envelope, plain white, but thick. Inside were 10 years of statements from a savings account I hadn't thought about in forever. My college fund. The one Mom used to joke about back when I was little, how I'd get into any school I wanted and she'd sell her left arm if that's what it took. The last statement in the stack was just 6 months old. That didn't make sense. I hadn't touched the account since she passed. But someone had. 32 separate withdrawals. Almost all rounded $500 here, $2,000 there. The memo field on each entry said things like home expenses, repairs, transportation, or, more cryptically, debt repayment. But the worst part? The account was nearly empty. I sat down hard on the edge of the bed. My legs weren't working right. The numbers swam on the page. I pulled out my phone and logged into the online account. The last login was a week ago. Not me. Not even close. There it was in black and white, $312.68 left. That fund had over $48,000 in it when Mom died. Gary always made this big show of honoring her wishes. Said he was doing everything for me. I remember sitting across from him at her memorial, still numb, still in shock, when he told me she made sure you'd be okay for school. I'll handle the paperwork. Don't worry. I was 15 then. I trusted him. I shouldn't have. For a full 10 minutes, I just sat there in that room, staring at the pages spread out across the quilt like they might rearrange themselves into something less horrifying. Then something inside me flipped. I walked into the kitchen where Gary sat watching TV, the volume way too high, like always. His gut hung over his waistband and he smelled faintly like beer and Old Spice. He glanced up, then back at the screen. Hey, I found Mom's old account statements, I said, trying to keep my voice even. The college fund one. He didn't even flinch. Oh yeah, I had to move some money around. Your tuition's not due yet, is it? He spoke like it was nothing. Like I'd asked about picking up milk. You've been using it? I asked, still holding the paper in my shaking hand. Gary shrugged. I figured she'd want it used for the household. Food. Bills. Keeping the lights on. Things got tight after she passed. But this says you've been pulling thousands for transportation and debt? There's a payment for $4,000 labeled miscellaneous. What even is that? Now he looked annoyed. You think it's easy keeping things afloat? You got no idea what it costs to run a house. She didn't leave a manual, kid. That word. Kid. Like I hadn't been managing my grades, part-time work, and grief for the last 3 years while he drowned himself in poker nights and skip-job interviews. I felt my face go cold. It wasn't your money. She was my wife, he snapped. It's family money. Don't get dramatic. Family. Right? The man who made me feel like a guest in my own home for 3 years now wanted to play the blood card? I walked out of the kitchen without another word, heart pounding so loud it filled my ears. The next day, I called in sick to my shift at the bookstore and biked to my best friend Lauren's house. I needed to talk to someone who didn't think I was being dramatic. Lauren was always level-headed, the calm to my chaos. When I showed her the documents, she didn't say anything for a long time. Then she looked up and said, "You know my dad's a lawyer, right?" My throat went dry. "Yeah? Let's ask him what you can do." Quietly. And that was the moment it shifted from betrayal to strategy. I knew I had to make a choice, let Gary walk away with what was left of my future, or fight. And not just fight, bury him. Quietly. Legally. Thoroughly. I chose war. The next day, Lauren's dad, Mr. Patel, sat across from me in his home office wearing a navy polo shirt and reading glasses that made him look less like a lawyer and more like someone's favorite uncle. He flipped through the printouts I'd brought, bank statements, a copy of the trust my mom had set up before she passed, and a notarized letter naming me the sole beneficiary of the fund. His face didn't change much, but I noticed his jaw flexed slightly when he reached the last page. "Tell me exactly what Gary told you when your mom passed," he said. I repeated it word for word. "She made sure you'd be okay. I'll handle the paperwork. Don't worry, Mr. Patel nodded slowly like he'd heard this story before, maybe not this exact one, but close enough. "Here's the thing," he said, tapping the trust document. "Your mom set this up properly. This is legally protected money. It wasn't for household use, and unless Gary was listed as a trustee, which he's not, he had zero right to access these funds. What he did here, he hesitated, then said carefully, "This looks a lot like misappropriation. Possibly even theft." The word hit like a baseball bat to the chest. I felt a sudden rush of blood to my ears. Theft. Mr. Patel leaned forward. "Now, I want you to understand, we're not talking about breaking down doors or press charges just yet. You're underage. That plays to your advantage. Courts take a dim view of adults who steal from minors, especially when it's money meant for education. So, what can I do?" He sat back. "You can let me write a letter. A very polite, very formal letter. I'll cite the trust language, the transactions, the total balance drained. And I'll suggest that unless the money is returned within a specific window, we'll proceed with legal action. If we're lucky, he'll panic and pay up. And if we're not..." He looked at me over the top of his glasses. "Then we escalate. Quietly. But thoroughly." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. I didn't know whether I wanted to cry or scream. Probably both. I biked home with that letter burning a hole in my backpack. Mr. Patel told me to hold onto it for now, to give Gary a chance to admit something first. Sometimes, he said, a guilty man will tell on himself if you just sit quietly and let him squirm. That night at dinner, Gary was in a good mood. He made spaghetti, cracked a beer, even asked about school like he hadn't forgotten I existed. It felt like a trap. When he asked what I'd been up to that day, I said, "Went to Lauren's. Helped her dad with some paperwork stuff. He's a lawyer." The fork froze halfway to his mouth. "Lawyer, huh?" "Yeah," I said, eyes on him. "Pretty smart guy. Knows a lot about trust funds." There was this flicker, just for a second. A twitch at the corner of his eye, like he'd been stung by something invisible. But he recovered fast. "Good to know," he said, too casually. "Maybe he can help me with all the legal hoops I've been jumping through on your behalf." "Yeah," I said, chewing slowly. "I'm sure he'd love to." We didn't talk much for the rest of dinner. Later that night, I heard Gary on the phone in the garage. I only caught pieces, misunderstanding, "She doesn't know what she's looking at, and I'll take care of it." He didn't know I'd already printed everything. Dated. Indexed. Ready. The next morning, I woke up to find an envelope slid under my bedroom door. Inside was a check for $1,000 and a sticky note that said, "For college stuff, hope this helps. Love, Gary." It was laughable. That's when I knew he was scared. Not sorry scared. I stared at that check, and all I could think was, this man thinks I can be bought off for $1,000? I tucked it into my drawer and texted Mr. Patel. He made a move. "Let's make ours." I sat across from Mr. Patel again, this time in his actual office downtown, rows of heavy law books lining the walls, everything smelling faintly like paper and lemon-scented floor polish. The difference was the folder on his desk. It wasn't just a collection of bank statements anymore. It was a case file. He adjusted his glasses, calm as ever. He's already making mistakes. That check? That's him admitting guilt, whether he realizes it or not. If he truly thought he had a legal right to that money, he wouldn't be trying to repay it in bits and pieces. I nodded, still staring at the copy of the check on the table. $1,000 down, $47,000 to go. "But I need to ask," Mr. Patel said gently, "how far do you want to take this?" I hesitated. Not because I didn't know, but because it still felt surreal. This man had married my mom, stood beside me at her funeral, smiled at my graduation photos. And behind all of that, he was quietly bleeding my future away. Mr. Patel must have sensed my hesitation because he leaned in slightly and said, "You're not being vindictive. You're enforcing a trust your mother set up to protect you. That's what this is about." That helped. Not because I needed permission, but because I needed clarity. "I want him to pay it back," I said slowly. "All of it. I don't care if it takes years. I want him to know he messed with the wrong person. And if he refuses?" I looked Mr. Patel dead in the eye. "Then I want to bury him." He gave a small, satisfied nod, then opened the drawer beside him and pulled out a blank form. "This is the first step. It's not a lawsuit, not yet. But we'll send him a formal demand letter and file a notice of intent to pursue restitution if he doesn't comply within 30 days. We'll also request full transaction histories directly from the bank. If he altered anything, it'll show up." "Will he go to jail?" I asked, the question slipping out before I could stop it. "It's not impossible," he said plainly. "But more likely, we'll force a repayment plan and secure a lien against his assets. If he ever sells the house, buys a car, refinances anything, we get first claim. We'll make it very, very uncomfortable for him to live beyond his means." That night, I slid the $1,000 check into an envelope with a post-it, "Return to sender." When I handed it to Gary, his face went pale. "I thought we were good." he said. I'm trying to make it right. No, I said calmly. You're trying to make it quiet. His lips parted like he wanted to argue, but then he just stood there, frozen. I turned and walked away, my heart pounding but steady. I made my decision. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to post online. I wasn't going to tell my friends or my teachers or even my cousins. I was going to fight this his way. On paper, in courtrooms, through channels he thought I was too young and too dumb to understand. And I was going to win. The letter went out on a Tuesday. Mr. Patel sent it by certified mail, signature required, and I tracked the delivery like a hawk. It landed in our mailbox Friday morning. Gary didn't open it right away. I watched from the living room as he stared at the envelope, white, thick, official. His name typed neatly on the front. He turned it over a few times like it might bite him. Then he slid it under a stack of junk mail and went back to his coffee like it wasn't ticking like a bomb. I waited. By Monday, it was still on the counter, unopened. Tuesday morning, I left a sticky note on top of it. You should probably read this before your next poker night. That got his attention. I came home from school to find him pacing the kitchen like a caged animal. The envelope had been torn open, its contents spread across the island. Mr. Patel's letter, a breakdown of the account, a formal demand for repayment, and a warning that legal action was coming if he didn't respond. Are you out of your mind? He snapped when I walked in. This is harassment. No, I said, setting down my backpack. This is me protecting what's mine. You think you can just ruin my life over some misunderstanding? I raised you. You stole from me. His face twisted. Your mom would never. Don't say her name, I said low and sharp. Not when you've been draining the fund she set up for me behind my back. He opened his mouth again, but nothing came out. The silence said everything. That night, I heard him on the phone again. Muffled. Frantic. Phrases like, can't afford a lawyer, just a kid. And no, I didn't mean to commit fraud. I recorded it through my door, just in case. 2 days later, a response came, not from Gary, but from a lawyer. Well, technically a paralegal. Some discount firm he must have found online. They claimed Gary acted in good faith and was unaware of the fund's restricted terms. Mr. Patel wasn't impressed. We gave him an off-ramp, he said, shaking his head. Now we file. Within the week, we initiated formal proceedings to freeze his accounts and demand discovery. Suddenly, Gary wasn't just angry, he was panicked. He tried to play nice. He started offering rides to school, made dinner, asked if I wanted to watch movies. He even apologized. It was a good performance. Really, Emmy-worthy. But the thing is, once you see the lie, you can't unsee it. He wasn't sorry. He was scared. And he should be. Because that letter, that was just the beginning. The official paperwork arrived 3 days after Gary's lawyer responded. Served right to our front door by a process server in a windbreaker who looked like he enjoyed the drama. I was upstairs when it happened, but I heard Gary's voice echo through the hall. You've got to be kidding me, he said. Loud, angry, hollow. I came downstairs a few minutes later and found him at the kitchen table. Just deflated. No yelling. No fake fatherly concern. He looked like someone had knocked the wind out of him and then kicked him while he was down. What's discovery? He asked without looking up. I didn't answer, because he already knew. Mr. Patel explained it all in his last email. Once discovery begins, it's not just the college fund that gets examined. It's everything. His taxes, his bank accounts, gambling transactions, hidden Venmo payments, even the PayPal account he thought no one knew about. Are you trying to destroy me? Gary asked that night. Is that what this is? No, I said honestly. You did that to yourself. He didn't argue, just walked into the garage and slammed the door hard enough to rattle the house. By the following week, he was losing it. Paranoid, short-tempered. He changed his phone passcode twice in one day and installed some sketchy antivirus software on his laptop. I knew because I still had the guest Wi-Fi password and watched him pacing the driveway, muttering to himself like the walls were closing in. Then came the day I found a pawn receipt on the hallway table, his wedding ring sold for $220. That's when I knew he was broke. Not just financially, but spiritually. Gary always had this swagger, this unshakable belief that he could charm his way out of anything. But when the emails from Mr. Patel's office kept coming, more pointed each time, his confidence started to crack. Listen, he said one night, pulling up a chair across from me like we were negotiating a ceasefire. What if I gave you $5,000 now and just, we call it even? I blinked. You think $5,000 makes up for stealing my future? I didn't steal. You did, I said, voice calm but final. And now you're trying to bargain like it's a Craigslist transaction. I'm trying to make it right. No, I said again, you're trying to make it easy. I walked away. Again. The next day, I got an email from Mr. Patel. We've uncovered gambling activity linked to 3 separate online casinos, all funded through accounts that drew directly from the trust. This strengthens our case for fraud. Do not engage him directly from here forward. It wasn't just mismanagement anymore. It was calculated. Gary hadn't been using the money for food or bills. He'd been betting it away, playing roulette with my mom's last promise to me. It made me sick and furious, but also clear. He was crumbling. And this was only phase 1. I came home from school to find my bedroom door unlocked. That alone was weird. I always locked it when I left. But what stopped me cold was the feeling. Something was off, like the air had been disturbed. And then I saw it. My top dresser drawer was slightly open. The envelope where I kept Gary's return check, the one with his sticky note, was gone. My pulse spiked. I ran downstairs. Where is it? I demanded, slamming the kitchen drawer he was rifling through. Gary barely flinched. I threw it out, he said, cool as ice. You're welcome. I stared at him. That was evidence. He rolled his eyes. It was a check, sweetheart. Calm down. I told you not to go in my room. And I told you this is my house. I could have laughed. My house? This man was living on my mom's pension, gambling away my tuition, and now rummaging through my stuff like I owed him something? I didn't say anything. I just turned, went upstairs, and pulled out my backup. See, I'd scanned the check weeks ago. Saved it on a flash drive. Uploaded it to the cloud. Hell, I even printed a second copy and mailed it to Mr. Patel. Gary had no idea who he was messing with. But now I knew something else. He was panicking. Because people like Gary don't get careless unless they feel the ground shift beneath them. His poker face was crumbling. A week later, Mr. Patel filed an official motion to request a forensic audit. That meant we'd subpoena Gary's bank accounts, past and present, and track every cent that touched the college fund. That's when Gary finally broke. He sat me down, voice shaking, hands ringing like a man in a confession booth. Listen. I know I screwed up, okay? But if this goes public, I'm done. I'll lose everything. You should have thought of that before you treated my future like a slot machine. I can make it right, he pleaded. I still have friends. I can borrow. I'll pay you back, every cent. I leaned forward and stared him dead in the eyes. I don't want your promises, Gary. I want your confession. His face drained of color. Put it in writing, I said. Every transaction. Every lie. Admit everything you did. And maybe I'll consider not dragging you through court. I'm not doing that. Then get a lawyer who's better than your last one. He stood, teeth clenched. You're trying to ruin my life. No, I said, standing too. I'm making sure you don't ruin anyone else's. The next day, he didn't come home. By Friday, his truck was gone too. I half expected him to skip town, to bail and leave a mess behind. But instead, something worse happened. A certified envelope arrived from his new attorney. Inside was a draft settlement agreement. It included a full confession. And an offer. Gary would agree to monthly repayments, the lien on his truck, and forfeiture of any future claim to my mother's estate. In exchange, we'd settle quietly and drop the motion for criminal charges. Mr. Patel called it a win. But it didn't feel like one. Because part of me still wanted him to pay in front of a judge. In public. To feel what I'd felt, helpless and betrayed. But another part of me? That part looked at the confession and realized. I already won. The moment I opened the envelope, I knew it was over. It was all there, his signature, a notarized confession, a structured repayment plan drafted by his lawyer. The amount he owed, $47,362.18. The interest? Waived for now. But if he missed a payment, it would kick back in, plus penalties. Mr. Patel's voice crackled through the speakerphone. This is the best case outcome short of a conviction, he said. You've got legal leverage. He's on the hook. We've preserved your right to sue if he defaults. You played this smart. And yet I felt empty. I thanked him, hung up, and just sat there with the confession in my lap. Each sentence felt heavier than the last. I accessed the funds without authorization. I used the money for personal expenses unrelated to the beneficiary. I understand this was a breach of fiduciary responsibility. Reading it didn't make me feel better. It just made me remember every stupid time I'd looked at this man like family. Every time I'd second-guessed myself for not trusting him. Every time I told a teacher, a friend, a counselor, yeah, he's doing his best. Things have been hard since my mom passed. What a joke. The next day, Gary texted me, "Can we meet? Just to talk. Please." I didn't answer. He tried again the day after. "You can hate me. I deserve it. But I want to say something face to face." Lauren saw the messages and asked if I was really going to meet him. I didn't know. I hated the idea of giving him more time, more words. But something in me needed to see what he'd say when he couldn't hide behind a lawyer. So I agreed. 1 hour. Neutral place. No promises. We met at a park near our old neighborhood. The same one where I used to play while Mom sat on the bench with a book and a thermos of coffee. He looked older, smaller, or maybe just pathetic. "I'm sorry," he said, before I even sat down. I didn't respond. He pulled out an envelope, another one. "This is the first payment," he said. $2,000. I sold some stuff. Pawned more than I want to admit. I took it without a word. "I didn't think you'd actually follow through," he said, voice cracking. "I thought you'd threaten, maybe yell. But this? You made me look in the mirror for the first time in years." I wanted to believe he meant it, but I couldn't. Not really. "I'm not doing this for you," I said. "I'm doing it because Mom trusted you, and you betrayed that. I'm not letting that slide." He nodded. "I know." We sat there in silence for a long moment. Birds chirped. Someone walked by with a dog. The world kept spinning like it didn't care what had been lost. "I'm going to make it right," he said again. I stood up. "No, Gary, you're going to pay it back. That's not the same thing." And I walked away. The envelope with Gary's first payment sat untouched on my desk for almost a week. Not because I didn't want the money. God knows I needed it. But because something about the whole meeting left a sour taste in my mouth. The way he looked at me. The way he talked about making it right. Like he still had some version of redemption waiting around the corner. Then, a few nights later, I got a call from an unfamiliar number. "Hi, is this Danny?" A soft voice asked. "Yes, this is Brenda. I used to work at Halston Mortgage? With Gary." That name rang a bell. Halston Mortgage was where Gary had worked off and on, back when Mom was still alive. "I'm sorry to bother you," Brenda continued, "but I heard what happened. About the fund. I didn't know if you'd want to know, but I felt, I don't know, responsible in a way." "For what?" I asked, heart suddenly pounding. "There's something I don't think Gary ever told you. Right before your mom passed, she tried to move the fund." "What?" "She came into our office, asked about shifting it into a 2-signature account. One where you and a trustee would both have to approve any withdrawals. She was worried about what would happen if, couldn't breathe. If she died." "Yeah." I waited. "What happened?" Brenda sighed. "Gary came in a week later, told us she changed her mind, said he'd handle everything. We didn't think twice. But now, I don't know. It didn't feel right. I didn't remember much after that." I thanked her, hung up, just sat there, staring at the wall like it might start bleeding. She tried to protect me. Mom knew something wasn't right. She tried to set up guardrails. And Gary dismantled them before the dust on her grave had even settled. That's when the numbness cracked. It wasn't just betrayal. It wasn't even theft anymore. It was premeditated. He knew what he was doing. He saw the safety net she tried to build and cut the ropes himself. I called Mr. Patel. Told him everything Brenda said. "I can subpoena those office records," he said immediately. "If she documented any of that, hell, even if there's a witness who remembers, it opens a whole new angle. It moves us from civil to criminal territory. Possibly fraud with intent." "I want to go forward," I said. "No more leniency." "You sure?" "I'm sure. That night, I looked through old photos. One of Mom holding me at my kindergarten graduation. Her eyes were tired, but her smile was full. She never got to see the person I became, but she saw enough to try and protect me from the person she knew Gary could be. And now, I was finally protecting her legacy. Gary was served with the new subpoena 2 weeks later. This time, the charges were more serious: financial fraud with intent to deceive a minor beneficiary. The evidence from Halston Mortgage, notes from Brenda, digital logs of the visit, even a brief internal email noting a cancellation by surviving spouse gave us the missing piece. Gary tried to fight it. He hired a better lawyer. Claimed misunderstanding, grief, confusion. But it didn't matter. The paper trail told the real story. He knew the fund wasn't his, and he dismantled the protections my mom asked for anyway. We didn't even have to go to full trial. He settled fast. Publicly this time. The agreement forced him into a court-supervised repayment plan, locked his wages, and placed a formal lien on his future assets. He also had to issue a written apology to me, which, believe me, was not his idea. It was brief, cold, and full of "if I caused harm" phrases, but whatever. It wasn't for him. It was for me. And more importantly, it was for her. After the case closed, I moved out. I took what was left of the fund, recovered bit by bit from what he hadn't gambled away, and used it to pay for my first semester at college. It didn't cover everything, but it was enough to get started. Mr. Patel even helped me apply for additional aid and grants. I told him I wanted to study something useful, law maybe. He laughed, but in a proud kind of way. Gary's name doesn't come up anymore. We don't speak. No texts. No apologies. Nothing. But sometimes on long walks around campus, I think about the way he looked when I handed him that envelope, the one with my mom's trust language printed right at the top in bold. This account is to be used solely for the beneficiary's education, with no exception. I didn't just get my money back. I got myself back. And the last thing I said to him, the very last words I ever spoke to the man who married my mother and thought he could rewrite her will, was this: "She trusted you. I won't make that mistake again." Update: it's been 6 months. I made the dean's list. Mr. Patel checks in now and then, and Lauren's still my ride or die. Sometimes I visit the old park bench where Mom used to sit with her coffee and think about everything that could have gone wrong if I hadn't opened that filing cabinet. I don't visit Gary's name in my head anymore. Not out of forgiveness, just peace. He lost everything. And I finally have a future. Quiet. Certain. Mine.